What was the last piece of music you listened to? I'm willing to bet that it was something you've heard before and know you like, perhaps from an album you're familiar with or an artist that you've listened to for years. Or perhaps just a single on a playlist that gets you excited every time it comes up. Why is that? In researching for this video, I tried to find out how much music there is, but the number varies drastically depending on which site you visit. But Spotify puts it somewhere between 40 and 50 million tracks. You can estimate that places the amount of hours of music available through Spotify at around 2.3 million. Now, for those coming along at home, that's around 266 years of music. Now I know what you're thinking, how much of that have I, a regular music listener, listened to? Well, according to the global data analytics company Nielsen, the average human consumer listens to about 4 to 5 hours of music a day. Apparently, if you're a musician, that number is almost double, and millennials listen to almost 40 hours of music a week. Now we can assume for the purposes of this video that includes passive listening as well, sources like radios in convenience stores or in your car. This number is doubtlessly on the rise because of the ease with which we can listen to music anywhere, anytime. But most importantly, we listen to what we want more than ever. Thanks to streaming services like Spotify, Netflix, and YouTube, our entertainment is more self-catered than ever. And that is the key. When we like something, we rarely want it once. There's no lack of new music, so why haven't I stopped listening to Africa by Toto? Well, as it turns out, human beings really like repetition. As Elizabeth Margulis puts it, repetitiveness actually gives rise to the kind of listening we think of as musical. It carves out a familiar, rewarding path in our minds, allowing us at once to anticipate and participate in each phrase we listen to. When you hear a phrase from a familiar song, you've already started predicting the next notes and subconsciously singing along. Patterns and repetition within music make your brain go, I know what's going to happen, and thus I am smart. I will now release hormones for every note I successfully predict. Even if it's the first time you've heard a piece of music, way before you're able to sing along, your brain has been participating the whole time, predicting the next chord, and being able to hum along by the time the second chorus hits. This caters to our subconscious need to feel involved. It's kind of like when you're in a conversation with someone and they say something that reminds you of something you can talk about, and now all you can think about is wanting to make the conversation about you. Humans are kind of selfish, and we listen to music in a very similar way. Now, you might be tempted to think that our enjoyment of repetitive music was caused by modern pop music instead of it being the other way around. Instead, I would like to remind you of some of the most loved and enduring pieces of music of all time. I'm just saying Pachelbel's canon in D is basically Despacito, and I think we should start accepting that. So why suggest listening to more music when listening to something familiar is so much more biologically rewarding? I mentioned in my last commentary video that my musical mindset was completely changed when I was introduced to a live arrangement of Katy Perry's Roar by the Designated Hitters. And years before that, it was changed forever the first time I was introduced to Alter Bridge. Two drastically different kinds of music, even though you can see similarities, and I still listen to both regularly. But very little can compare to that initial I've never heard anything like this before, and I love it. We have a literally infinite source of new music within YouTube, in every conceivable genre, especially with independent creators. And perhaps you haven't even heard the best song you will ever hear. And furthermore, if you're a creator, the more music you consume and the wider that scope is, the more well-rounded you'll be as a musician. There's a great line in Rick and Morty in the episode Rest and Relaxation.
We should listen to one random song a day, you know? We end up hearing more songs we didn't like, but we discover a lot more that we did.
They continue to ponder what the ideal ratio might be, and although I don't have that, I think I have a good place to start. I know it might be controversial, but trust the algorithms. Depending on where you consume your music, suggestions might vary in quality. But if you just enjoyed Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi and you get suggested some random other hair metal band from the 80s that you've never heard of, taking the chance might lead to you discovering your new favorite band that you can bring up at all the parties and look cool. Especially on YouTube, I find that the suggestions are often really good. It's kind of uncomfortable that these algorithms know us better than we know ourselves. Genuinely, click on a song you know you like and let YouTube autoplay music in the background, especially if you're into indie bands. I'm willing to bet that there has been a video popping up in your suggestion for weeks and you haven't clicked on it because for some reason we're scared of anything new. But look at it this way, at some point somebody had to recommend you your favorite band or your favorite song, and now you can't imagine a life without it on your playlist. Step 2, and most importantly, is what I call the playlist method. Create a playlist of 10 songs, 2 of which you've never heard. These can be unfamiliar songs by an artist you know but you are yet to have listened to, or a song by an obscure band you only saw once on a poster on the way to work. It doesn't matter as long as it's new. The reason most of the playlist is songs you know you like is so that you have some tasty comfort zone blended in with your adventuring. And importantly, listen to these songs at least 3 or 4 times before changing it up again. Next thing you know, one of these recently introduced songs becomes one of your regularly listened favorites. Thing number 3, take suggestions. When somebody asks you, have you heard of such and such, and your answer is inevitably no, and they retort immediately, oh wait, but you have to listen to their hit single, whatever. You'll say, oh yeah, well, definitely do that, and totally forget about it. Or you could immediately pull out your device, search for it, and add it to your next listening session. As a bonus, something that really worked for me is having them text you a physical link to the YouTube video. This will foster greater social connections with fellow music lovers, and in turn, you can suggest something they've never heard of. And the great part is this applies to everything from YouTubers and movies and poems to stand-up shows. Some of the moments in my life I'm most thankful for are the times when my friends were able to grab the situation and like, no, you're gonna be listening to this thing right now. In turn, leading to my horizons being broadened. I was in a conversation recently and OK Go and their incredible work on YouTube came up. Not only had this guy never heard of them, which is fine, it's a big platform, but he was unaware that this kind of content was being created on the platform at all. How do you find this stuff is something that I get asked often, and for the most part, I don't know. But what I do know is I've been given a finite amount of time for music consumption, and it means too much to me to not explore as much of it as I can. We human beings, we fear change. And it's not that it's impossible for you to enjoy something new. In fact, when your brain encounters something it's unfamiliar with, it realizes it needs to work a little harder to create the neural pathways. But your subconscious interprets this as, well, this is gross and unfamiliar and I don't like it. It's not to my taste. The profound thing about our brains and how we are able to digest stimuli is that none of that is set in stone, thanks to the mere exposure effect. The first time you hear something that challenges you, it grinds a little too hard, but then you start hearing it on the radio or a clip on Instagram or a piece of music becomes a meme. Next thing you know, you're tapping your foot and working on a YouTube video essay advocating that more people should listen to your favorite things. Earlier I mentioned that you might be yet to hear the best song you've ever heard, but inversely, and perhaps even more profoundly, you might know the best song that someone else is yet to hear. Thanks so much for spending some of your valuable time with me. If I said something that resonated with you, perhaps hit like and share it with a friend. I felt like I hadn't done a nice sit down and think about things video in a while. I realized the gap for broader listening recently when I had a conversation with someone and they mentioned a song that meant so much to them. They couldn't stop talking about the song, and I'd never even heard of the artist. This leads me to my conclusion. In the end of all my videos from now on, I'm going to try and introduce you to something new, whether it be an artist, a song, or a piece of music, and I encourage you to do the same. And for the first one, I need to recommend the music of Grace Kelly. She's an incredible award-winning songwriter and great sax player. I wholeheartedly recommend the song Feels Like Home. I've been listening to it on repeat for weeks, and I keep hearing new incredible things. Not a word of exaggeration, the first time I listened to it and it got to the chorus, I burst into tears. It touched me genuinely. If you enjoy the kind of videos I make, I upload every 2 weeks or so hit subscribe, maybe a bell notification icon if you're into that sort of thing. I don't own your time. As you can tell, this is still a very small channel, so I do read every comment and try and respond. So if you have anything to add, please do so in the comment section. Goodbye.